Well, there's another spring game, another milestone getting us closer to the actual college football season. I actually had a lot more fun this spring game than I have the last couple. It seems like the last couple were more slogfest, and this one actually had some really good moments. Both sides of the ball, a lot of imperfection, but hey, it's spring, not everyone's there. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to digest. And if you're watching this video, you probably don't feel this way, but there's a lot of people who are like, oh, you can't overreact to spring. Okay, sure, but you can react to spring. Like, we're getting pieces of the puzzle here. And before this, my pre-spring video, I think I said take everything with a grain of salt. We're still going to do that. But it's evidence, right? It's our glimpse into practice, it's our glimpse into what they've been working on, it's a glimpse at the players. Lots of stuff to take notes on, not necessarily draw conclusions on. So I want to start out with what I found the most significant about the whole game, and that was the formations that were selected by whomever is calling the plays. I think it's Bobby. But half the game they were in two tight ends, and it makes total sense to do that given the personnel at A&M right now. You have like 4, maybe 5 rotational receivers right now, and that's not the spring game. That's going into fall that we know of. We're going to go backwards. It's Jalen Preston, Noah Thomas, who's apparently about to be a world breaker. We'll talk about that in a second. Anais, Evan Stewart, and Moose. So that's 5 guys you have right now that you know you can play in the game. And Jalen Preston's not a big play guy, but you know you can play him and rely on him to at least do his job. And hopefully he takes a step, but he can at least do his job. So I'm calling that 5 receivers that you know of. And you know people get hurt, you know things happen. When you talk about the tight end room, you're talking about Max, Donovan, just as your 2 starters who weren't even there for spring, and then Jake Johnson and Theo Orstrom looked really good in the spring game. And then behind them, you have Fernando Garza, who had a touchdown reception and a couple other receptions, a bunch of yards last game. He was going up against the second team, but still, he did it. And then, I think it's Jaden Platt. I forget his first name. These are Jaden or Jordan Platt. Doesn't he look fantastic in pads? And he's a really smart dude. He's a brainiac. He's a very much a school-oriented kid. If that guy can develop and get his wits about him, I mean, that frame is ridiculous. He looked lean, mean, but strong out there from afar. I mean, I saw it from the stands and then again on video, but he looked impressive out there. So you're talking like 4 tight ends that you know you can play, where you're only playing 1 or 2 at a time, and then 5 receivers. So it makes total sense that they were in 2 tight end for half the game. A lot of different stuff mixing it up with those tight ends. There was motion, there was running towards the motion, they were running away from the motion. There was a lot of good deception where there was a lot of 2 running back sets where the running backs would run one way and the quarterback would run another way in a zone read. A lot of good deception that we saw in what I deemed would be a very bland look at what to expect overall from the offense. But I think personnel-wise, I think that carries over. The fact that we're going to be a tight end heavy team, there's just so many bodies out there that can play tight end. And not to take anything away from the receivers that look real, that we know the receivers are all weapons. I mean, especially those top 4 right there. Now that Noah Thomas got offensive MVP. Too bad Bryce Anderson is an absolute beast and knocked him out of the game with what looks like a concussion. I don't know, that's speculation, but he got dinged up hard. He got hit right in the face mask and was down for a while. I'm sure you saw he didn't get to play the spring game. He only got like the first drive under his belt. So it's a shame we didn't get to see what he was. Everyone was raving about him. They were raving about him in like player interviews beforehand, and then it came out during the game that he was the offensive MVP, which that is significant. That's huge. That's much needed. That's perfect. That's exactly what this team needed. You need players like that to take steps and develop. And if that transfers onto the actual field on Saturdays, that makes this team so much better. Because we know what these receivers already were with Moose, Anais, and Evan. So yeah, that's really cool. And then Tease and Cottrell. Tease had the long touchdown from Max. It was on a walk-on, but still, he got that under his belt. He did that in Kyle Field in front of a crowd. And I guess I'll take this opportunity to just talk about him and Cottrell. I get them confused all the time. I'll eventually get it straight. The 2 freshman linebackers that got to play the whole game with the second unit. Platt, all the young freshmen. Ruben Owens, who looks good. We need to see more, but he looks good. He looks promising. Of course, we knew he would. These guys all got that first big college stadium atmosphere under their belt. They got to play. It's the benefit of enrolling early and getting to play in the spring game. They got tons of reps. And I'll tell you, number 21, the linebacker, his name will come back to me at some point. I'll learn the new guys' names as we go along. I know the names. They just escape me. Torin York. He looks studly. He looks very athletic, very ferocious at the point of attack. He looks like he's vicious with his arms and tackling, but he looked really good. I think he's someone that maybe halfway through the year you can play, but, he might have to play earlier than that, knowing this linebacker room, if they don't get anybody in the portal, anybody further in the portal, that is. But yeah, what a great experience for these young guys, these young offensive and defensive players, to just get a game under their belt. So I was talking about the tight ends, ran 2 of them for a lot of the game. I think that's typically Max. I think that's typically Donovan. But maybe you mix in some Jake. You mix in some Theo Orstrom, especially Jake. Jake looked really good. Jake Johnson, that is. And I think you have a great receiver rotation if you include your tight ends. Now, of course, they're going to want to add maybe a receiver or 2 in the portal, because Tease and Cottrell, as promising as they look, as good as they look, they were going up against second team, which was mostly, I think, in the corner realm. The second team was mostly walk-ons, which is a whole can of worms we'll get into in a second, which is kind of scary. But I think you're going to want at least one more guy out of the portal. It just makes sense. But if those 2 guys have to play, at least you've seen they can do something. Running backs, I just mentioned Ruben Owens. He looked good. You see the tools there. He never really got to explode or anything like that, but you saw some of the cutting ability. I think he had a couple of unfortunate runs where maybe blocks weren't fully picked up or things broke, the play broke down, whatever. He had a couple of those. But he did catch, I think, 3 balls, which is cool to see. Secure hands out of the backfield is something that Jimbo's always going to highly value. I'm sure Bobby values it too. God, I'm not going to get used to that. Anyway, good to see him catch some balls. Now, the one that stood out to me, and it probably stood out to you, maybe he didn't because he barely played, but it was Le'Veon Moss. He's really hard to take down. He was dragging defenders, even in plays that got blown dead on the field. He didn't go down. He got stood up. I mean, his momentum stopped, forward progress stopped, but he wasn't taken down. And he's dragging players 3, 4, 5 yards pretty much every play. I think he only had 4 carries. I think he averaged like over 6 yards a carry. Just an absolute workhorse. You're not going to arm tackle him. You're going to have to gang tackle him. He's so young. He's going to be a redshirt freshman, I think. I think he's still a redshirt. I think he's still a freshman because he got a redshirt last year. But if this guy keeps growing and he gets some opportunity and you're running 3 running backs and the defense is getting tired and the running backs are not getting as tired, I think this guy is going to be beastly. And that's probably my boldest statement coming out of this running back room. I think Le'Veon Moss has star potential. Just based on the little bit we saw last year and then this glimpse during spring. He got hurt, so it sucks. You didn't get to see that much. But you got to see his 4 carries on that one drive where he was just beasting. He was tearing it up. Amari Daniels was kind of the workhorse running back. I think he got most of the carries, him and Crownover. I think Moss was supposed to get most of those Crownover carries. And I think Amari Daniels looks very explosive. I think he's definitely someone you're going to want to mix into the game with other running backs, I think, as a change of pace guy, because he is super quick to hit in the holes, and if the defense gets a little bit of, they get a little gas, I think he's really going to make him pay. So we'll see what happens there. He looks promising. But all 3 running backs looked very promising. I love Crownover in the eye. He just looks like he fits the position there. He's a more mature body now. He's kind of squattier, smaller guy. I think he can get under some people. I like that. They only ran the eye out of the 2s. I don't know if that was because of... That was probably receiver personnel, tight end reasons with injuries and stuff like that. But I would love to see more eye with Crownover. So yeah, 3 running backs. I really hope, and I'll say it every video, I really hope we get a 3 running back rotation going. That would just be what we need, I think. But, they know better than I do. All right, let's move things. O-line. I thought the O-line played well. At first glance in person, I had a bad angle, and I think a lot of people in Kyle Field had a bad angle. If you went, maybe it's just me being picky, but the seating situation kind of sucked because obviously there's construction on one side. They didn't open the top bowl, so everyone's kind of just stuck into the bottom bowl of like 2/3 of the stadium, maybe half the stadium, maybe just over half the stadium, and it felt tight. for a spring game, and you weren't able to really choose what angle you got. You were kind of just forced into a section that had availability. And of course, we moved after halftime, but because people left because of the heat, and the first half was super long. But yeah, so it was hard to get a full glimpse of everything early on. My first impression was that the O-line was kind of suffering, and they got beat a couple times. I mean, it's a good D-line they're going up against, especially when it's ones versus ones. I think the D-line definitely had the advantage whenever they were doing twists or stunts. But I think when they were manning up and blocking or zone blocking or, just kind of straight up blocking, not against a stunt, I think they held their own. I think they looked really good. I think, Basantis got worked a couple times, but he's a freshman going up against a beast of a D-line. I think he got his stuff together. I think Crownover has a lot of work to do, but he had a couple of good moments. I don't think he'll be the starter or anything like that. I think he's a long-term project, like maybe senior year starter or something like that. Because Fothery got hurt the week of the game, so he didn't play. But I really liked what I saw. There was just some good, secure play at times. They were blowing some holes through the defense. That's a good defensive front. I think they made some room for their running backs. They gave the quarterback time. At times they didn't, but more often than not they did against a good D-line. So overall it wasn't perfect, but I was happy with the O-line performance, all things considered, because we know they weren't healthy. Now moving over to the D-line, obviously we know what they are. We know what they can be. I have a couple of concerns, though, and that might surprise you. I do have a couple of concerns about the D-line. Well, one main concern. So this D-line is super versatile. Shamar Turner, Walter Nolan, those guys can play inside and outside. Shamar Stewart can play inside and outside, and we saw them move these guys around. On a third down, they even put Isaiah Rakes, number 34, I think that's Isaiah Rakes, on the outside. They had Fadil Diggs on the inside, and Fadil Diggs dropped back into coverage, and Isaiah Rakes was the pass rush guy. They have some versatile guys, and then obviously Diggs is the main pass rusher. Like that's kind of his specialty. His body is built for that. He's quicker. He's more geared for that. But he's kind of the only guy that does that. And yeah, you have other hybrid guys that you can plug and play, maybe play strong side DN very effectively, but you really only have one true pass rusher. And I think Walter Nolan's going to be that other guy that can pass rush from anywhere because he's literally a freak of nature. He's so explosive for his size, and he lost weight, but I bet he's still like 285, 290. He's going to get back up to 300 by the season. I think he lost weight, but losing weight doesn't necessarily mean losing power. Maybe you lose some leverage, but he's probably just as strong as he was, heavier and quicker right now. He's a reliable pass rusher, but that's not really his main job. He's going to line up inside. And then Malik Silla and Eni White played with the second team. Hard to get a gauge on them. They still look undersized to me. They still got washed out by the backup O-linemen at times. They have good skill sets. I saw good hands from them. I saw some good moves from them, but they're light, and they're going to be going up against the best O-lines you'll ever go up against in college football. So big summer coming up for those two guys. I have high hopes for those two guys. LT Overton, I didn't mention his name. He looks really, really athletic right now. I think he could develop into an edge rusher. But I didn't see a lot in this, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, if y'all saw it and I didn't see a lot of, domination by the D-line. I didn't see a lot of it against an O-line that was kind of, depleted. I saw Walter Nolan obviously dominate, and then every time they stunted, which, that's a tool they can use, every time they did a twist or anything like that, or most of the times, they were successful with that, and that's where they were getting all their pressure. But, at times you're going to need that one defensive end to beat a tackle and get pressure on the quarterback. That's got to be part of the game plan in this league. Or that's got to be part of the expected game plan. That has to happen, at least sometimes. I don't really think it happened that often. I think Malik Silla had a couple of hurries. I think there may have been a couple of hurries. But, and it's also hard to tell when you can't be, I'm thinking about on the fly. It can also hurt my perception or a fan's perception from, 100 yards away when you can't actually hit the quarterback. So that could be playing into it. Personnel-wise and what I see, though, I do really hope that someone develops as a great pass rusher. Because Fiddle Diggs was a really good pass rusher, but I really hope he takes the next step, too. I hope they can get that one-man wrecking crew. So D-line, obviously, we're not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. I'm just observing, and I'm just trying to be critical because it's really easy just to say, oh, this D-line is dominant. Thank you. But, they will be, so whatever. Cornerbacks, The corners, they definitely scare me, and they should scare you too. 2022 got 4 really good corners in that recruiting class. They're all off the team now. Bobby Taylor was the last one. Oh, rest in peace. This is so sad. Bobby Taylor transferred, or he's transferring. Or he's in the portal, Is that not so sad? I mean, Bobby was the guy. Bobby was the Aggie's Aggie. We love Bobby Taylor. He helped us get that 22 class together. He was the front runner of that class. And then he puts on his story, and I didn't really want to leave either. It's like, oh my God, break my heart, twist the knife. But fortunately, to make up for that, and nothing will fill the void that Bobby has left in our hearts, A&M did get a 3-year starter transfer out of, I'm blanking on the school, but it's a 3-year starter out of a school, so that's good to get at corner. Sam McCall, his body looks great. It's hard to get a full read on it without a full, receiving lineup. They're really, really just targeting tight ends and Evan Stewart, and then Anias wasn't a full go. He looks good out there, but here's the thing. The corners all look good. All the ones that played look good. The starters that played, the rotational scholarship starters that played, I thought they looked fine. But the fact that we saw so many walk-ons playing, and nothing against walk-ons, it is what it is. Every team has walk-ons. But the fact that there were so many playing tells me that there's ground to make up here. You got to find some bodies. You're going to have to find some people. And yeah, you lose Bobby, you pick one up, but that kind of nets out as a 0. So what else happens? I don't think Chappelle played. That's going to add to that. That's going to add a lot to that. And then the nickels, the safeties, they're solid. I'm not really going to go over them. They're really good. They're really, really good. But these outside corners, getting burned deep, one-on-ones, that I could see being a big issue on this team this year, especially if something happens to one of the starters. So just look out for that. I'm very nervous about the depth there. Just as I'm pretty nervous about the linebacker depth. I thought the starters looked great. I thought they looked fine. I think edge has star potential. And I think Chris Russell has taken huge steps, but I don't think either one are game breakers or anything like that. And they look solid this spring game, and I think they'll be solid next season. Of course, I think edge, like I said, has that potential to blow up and be that guy. But we'll see. He had that potential last year. He took some steps, but he didn't really, explode onto the scene. But they look good. I think we can rely on those two guys. It's just what's happening behind them. I think Torin York is promising. He's super young. I didn't see too much from Sanford, but I haven't really rewatched just watching him. So maybe I'll take another look at him, and I'll tell y'all later what I thought. But I do know York stood out to me. So this is the question that's going to be up until the first game of the year, especially going to that Miami game. What does the depth look like at corner and linebacker? What happens when those guys get dinged up or they get tired? That's the big question mark on this football team. And the one thing I haven't talked about yet was the quarterbacks. Bury the lead, talk about it at the end, whatever. But they both look solid. I thought it kind of sucked for Max. I thought it was kind of unfair, but it tells me something, but I'll get into that in a second. Max only ran with the 2s. Max got 0 looks with the 1s. He played against walk-on DBs the whole game, and he had Tees and Cottrell as his receivers and then other walk-ons, or players that I'm blanking on. None of the rotational receivers as of yet. So I thought that sucked for Max, and he had the the O-line was typically spelled whenever he was out there. They were doing the no maroon, no white O-line, just substitute as you go O-line. And he was typically getting the backups. He had a couple of starters sprinkle in. I think he had Remington Strickland. He had Mark Naboo. He had Jordan Moko in there a couple times. But besides that, I think he had mostly walk-ons or super young guys. So he had a lot of pass rush in his face the whole time from various areas. I think Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy had a sack on him, which was awesome to see GBD getting out there. I think he'll be rolling in the rotation a lot next year. So that was cool to see. I didn't bring him up. But yeah, he had some good passes to Fernando Garza. That one pass to Tees, I think. 13's Tees, right? I get Tees and Cottrell mixed up. But he looked good. He had some good balls. He was backing up a lot, which sucks for him. I think he's a serviceable, good quarterback. I think serviceable is not even the right word. I think he's a really good quarterback. And I think the fact that he didn't run with the 1s at all tells me that, oh man, here I go. As I'm catching myself mid-sentence, I'm drawing conclusions here. So take my conclusion drawing with a grain of salt. I think it's a sign that the coaches have made up their mind that Connor's the guy. And I think we all think that should be the case because he's the one with the most eligibility. He's the one that A&M recruited as a freshman. He's the one that's being tailor-made. for what A&M's doing. He's obviously the one that I think that has more upside, more explosiveness, more running potential, more playmaking potential. Maybe more mistake prone, but he didn't really show it last year. Maybe not. Just because he takes more risks doesn't mean he's necessarily going to, it's not going to necessarily be a turnover every time. So that was telling to me, and I think Connor looked fine. I think he had a couple situations where his balls weren't perfect, but, he didn't have his receivers. He had a hobbled Anias who wasn't a full go. He had Evan, and he made it happen with Evan. But, no Moose, no Noah, who was his best target, no Donovan. So I think he made some lemonade at times. He had a couple of good runs. I think he had two 11-yard runs, I think, or two 10-yard runs, something like that. I think when the lights are on Saturday, I think we all know that Connor's a gamer. And I think these coaches, they're going to say, you have to, right? You're going to say it's a quarterback battle. It's political, obviously. You have to. Because if Max leaves now, who's behind him? The freshman, I forget his name. The freshman quarterback who hasn't enrolled yet. Yeah, so I get it. But I think that was obvious. I think it was obvious to me that they're rolling with Connor. Because typically if they're not, they're going to give the other quarterbacks some reps with the ones. At least that's what I think. That's what I think would happen. I think that'd be smart to do. So they let him run with it the whole time. And when I say ones, I don't know if you noticed, but the rotational D-line ones were all in white. And then the backups were all in maroon. But for the most part, there were a lot of white jerseys that were the ones that didn't start but got rotated in. So it was are those your ones? So I'm saying that to say that Connor truly went against the ones, and I think Max truly went up against the twos. Besides GBD, who I think is on a rehab program, I think he's going to be playing with the ones. And then Drew Beltran, is that his name? Got a sack this game. He was one of the MVPs or most improved players of the defense. He's a 6'1", 260 walk-on. It sounds like me. Who's this Drew Beltran guy? And is he going to play? 260 at D-tackle in the SEC? I don't know, but hey, he got a sack this game with the ones, against the ones, and he got an accolade for spring. So on a stacked D-line for you to make a name for yourself like that, damn. So we'll see there. But that's about all I have on my notes. I'm going to flip through briefly to see if there's anything else I wanted to bring up. I definitely wanted to highlight Le'Veon Moss. I definitely wanted to bring up Walter Nolan being a beast, because he's a beast, and I think he's going to be a superstar. I think he's going to be one of the best D linemen we've seen, probably the best since Miles. Is that? Yeah, probably the best. What's the next best? Leal? Yeah, I think he can be better than Leal. So, yeah, really good stuff from Walt. Really good stuff from Le'Veon. I liked Connor. I like his ability to run. I like his ability to make lemonade. I think he had some good balls. Evan Stewart's an absolute stud. We know this. I didn't speak on it too much because we know. But that is about it, guys. I like some of the play calling, some of the deception, some of the motion. I love going 2 tight end with the personnel that A&M has. And you have the ability to not do that. You have the ability to go 4 wide, 5 wide at times. They ran the running back out wide at times. I think it was Amari Daniels every time. Makes sense. He's the quickest one. They're poised to be very versatile. They're poised to do a lot of deception. I think players and coaches have spoken on the deception, the motion that they've been running more often. And I think it was the best spring game, just plays-wise, the way the game went in the last at least 3 years. So, yeah, I'll overhype it a little bit. It was a great time. It was fun. I liked a lot of what I saw, especially considering so many things were incomplete, especially that O-line. I had fun watching it. I had fun rewatching it, and I think I'm going to watch it one more time. So, what did you guys think? What overreactions are you guys pulling from this with a grain of salt? I had fun. I loved it. I want to hear your thoughts, and if you agree or disagree with anything I said, let me know. But until then, guys, I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Gig 'em.